Hello and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Bergson. I am the Director of Community Outreach for Freshdesk, and I am joined as always by the doctor, who's wearing his lab coat today, Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmus, and we are here the second Friday of every month, broadcast from beautiful downtown
Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah, which is actually pretty beautiful now.
It is. You know, I've been away the last 2 weeks, was over in Italy. When I left, the temperature was in the 30s. There were no buds on the trees. Came home 2 weeks later and beautiful spring has arrived.
Oh, but you were in Europe, so the temperature wouldn't have been in the 30s. It would have been in
the teens.
In the zeros.
Yeah. Oh, there, yes.
Because if it's in the 30s, that's like 90 degrees.
Yes. So it was, yeah. It was warmer there too. It was actually, you know, the funny thing, it was warmer. So I was walking around in short sleeve shirts. There were people, most people were wearing those light down jackets and stuff like that. I'm looking at them like they're nuts. They're looking at me like crazy American.
Well, I think
they were right.
They were right. They were right. So we're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be on June, our next regularly scheduled show will be on June 12th, but we have a special show coming up. This I've been waiting for a long time. Westchester is a technology center. There's a lot of companies here. There's a lot of businesses here that are cutting edge technology. IBM being one of them.
I grew up in Westchester and got involved in technology in 1971. So it has a long-standing history as a technology.
So next Wednesday, May 14th, is the Westchester Digital Summit. Chris Desi and John Zanzarella have put together a phenomenal program, because they included us, to talk about digital and social and in terms of business. And we're excited. We're going to be broadcasting live from there. We're going to see if we can pull some speakers off to the stage. We're going to see if we can give our 2 cents on the topics that are talked about there. So look for that coming up.
We were talking about it yesterday, and we just made the wise decision. We are not going to broadcast live for 8 hours. Even I would be taxed for talking that long.
Even you would be taxed.
Yes.
All right, so you've heard it here. Jonathan has his limits. He will not talk for 8 hours straight.
I'm not going to try it. I believe I may actually be capable of it, but they don't want to find out. I don't want to find out. You certainly don't want to find out.
So we've got some really good topics this week. We have our recurring features. We're going to have some. We have a kudo. So stay tuned for an actual kudo. We have our quote of the month. We do have some. I think we have some shame on yous.
There are always those.
And but to get us started off, you are actually, I guess you're wearing it today. You are our techno gadget guy. I don't even have to call it the Apple Watch. I just have to say the watch.
The watch, capital W.
The watch. It's here.
It's in the wild.
It's out there. People bought it. I've seen pictures of it. I haven't actually seen it live. Have you seen one?
I have not. They were not prominent around Europe, and so no, I haven't seen one. But that won't stop us from opining upon it. And this is one of those things. We've discussed it before. I think there's a lot to love about wearables. I liken lots of early new technologies. Many years ago, Osborne Compaq put a handle on a 26-pound computer and called it a portable.
Right.
And if that was the definition by which we were going to define portable computing,
and portable phones, you had that. You had
the brick.
The brick, yeah.
Yeah. You had to carry it in a case. Right. So these early.
You had your assistant
yeah.
carry it in a case.
I did not. I was not successful enough to have someone do that for me. But the answer is there's a lot to dislike about the first generation Apple Watch. There's a lot to dislike about the Samsung Watch. It's interesting. Even while I think there's more to dislike about the Apple Watch than the Android watches, Apple nonetheless managed to sell on day one more watches than Android shipped in a year. A testament to Apple's marketing prowess. But there are so many things that We're still looking for what are the right applications. I've seen people talk about, wow, it lets me do video chatting. You still have to be within range of your phone because it's a tethered device.
Right.
And you could do that activity just as easily, if not more easily, on your phone with an expanded user interface, better battery life. So
Right.
there are a lot of things for which people are looking at the watch
But
and
you
going,
can't say, come in Dick Tracy,
Yes.
come in Dick Tracy
Yes.
on your phone.
Right.
It's not the same.
right. No, and I love being able to do that because this is one of the rare pieces of technology. Now, Apple's made certain things cool. When I started wearing this watch, all my techie friends looked at me with disdain, at least, if not worse, saying, you've got to be kidding. But it was the first piece of technology that I've ever seen where non-techies were really captivated by it. It's like, wow, you can talk into it, you can take pictures on it. You can't, Apple people, but I can.
But isn't an Apple secret sauce is making things cool?
And a couple of things. One, making things cool. Two, and this is something, I think Google has done badly, Samsung has done badly, is building an ecosystem around it. So what Apple's done is put a platform, much like the original iPhone. If you remember when the iPhone first came out, it actually was a fairly boring and closed platform. Yeah, the UI in typical Apple fashion was beautiful and differentiated and great and all of that stuff. But the watch, the phone didn't really differentiate itself until Apple opened up the platform and app developers, as is always the case. We talk a lot about operating systems. I've done it for large portions of the last 30 years. And the truth of the matter is, operating systems are really, really boring stuff. That nobody should ever make a decision about anything they ever do based on the operating system.
And yet, that has been the prevalent decision-making criteria for decades.
Right. But what's driven it, and every platform has succeeded or failed based on the rich set of applications available that differentiate the platform. OS2 versus Windows. Windows won because Microsoft Office
that's
was
worth repeating.
Yeah.
Every
platform battle has been won by who differentiates from the rich set of applications available for the platform.
All right.
And that is why I think Apple will ultimately do well with the watch and justify some of the early hype, because they'll get application developers involved in a way that Google and Samsung and the Android community has not, with differentiated watch capabilities. And Apple with the Health Kit has also done a really good job of enabling people to create an interesting set of applications. So, the early things that are out there are relatively mundane and are available in other platforms. I think the platforms are going to be differentiated by the applications, and Apple's got a lot of application developers out there thinking about how they create differentiated apps on the watch, and that will ultimately determine the winner.
But it's including Google.
Yes, Google's got some interesting challenges. Apple has some questions about what it does with
But I'm saying Google as an app developer for the market, Android Wear.
Yes, and Google hasn't done a great job of that kind of thing. They make investments in applications and then seemingly let them languish. We've had discussions about what Google Docs might become, and Google talks often about their ability to iterate much faster than Microsoft, and we'll touch on Microsoft directions a little later. But the truth of the matter is, I remember having the discussion 4 or 5 years ago about how the cloud-based Office providers would be able to catch and surpass Microsoft's capabilities within a matter of years because of their ability to iterate so quickly. And they've asymptoted to very little change very quickly.
Right.
They got to good enough and haven't found
good enough.
Yeah, which is always the enemy of better.
And that's the challenge Microsoft has, is that they've always had to, one, remain backward compatible, one, the slow iteration of their software process, and the last is to they always try to come out with cool things to do that less than 10th of the percent of the population actually gets value.
Right, right. And that backward compatibility is always,
That's a huge one.
yeah. How much is driven by the decisions people made with DOS 1.0? Yeah.
So speaking of which, speaking of Windows, we skipped, what happened to 9?
What, 9?
Is there something wrong with the number 9?
Well, the truth of the matter is that there may be two things that are wrong with why we don't have Windows 9. One of them, and I don't ascribe a lot of credence to it, but apparently 9 sounds like some pejorative in Japanese, and it was decided, but more importantly,
And it means no in German.
yeah.
Windows No.
like
It's like the
Chevy Nova.
The Chevy Nova.
Yeah,
Right?
which trying to sell that in South America.
Nova
doesn't
Nova,
go.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hard to sell
Windows,
a car with
Windows
that.
9.
Yeah.
Windows No.
Yeah.
That won't work.
Yeah, but more importantly, and back to the issue of backwards compatibility, that there are applications out there that test for Windows version. And we had Windows 95 and Windows 98. And there's at least some belief, there's a blog post from somebody
It's
who
like a
purports,
Y2K problem.
yeah, but somebody purporting to be a Microsoft
Right.
developer. I haven't seen whether that's been confirmed or not, but basically said that there are applications who, instead of checking for Windows 95 or Windows 98, just checked for Windows 9. And if so, treated things in a certain fashion. And they, that there are some backwards compatibility issues that rendered 9, an issue. And, at the end of the day,
That would be cool if it was true.
it would be.
I
And
think we're going to have to, if anybody knows if that's true, let us know. Tweet it to the hashtag #PMDisrupt. Hashtag #PMDisrupt. We'd love to know.
yeah, but I also think there are marketing reasons. And if you look, Microsoft's naming convention isn't exactly been consistent for very long. Windows 3, Windows 95, Windows 98, ME, Vista, XP, Windows 7. So there's been no consistency whatsoever.
Yeah, right. You never know what the next one's going to
Yeah,
be called.
so 10 is as good as a name as any.
Right.
Yeah, seemed to work okay for OS X.
So what is it? So what is it going to mean for Microsoft? Though? That's the question.
I think there are a couple of things. First of all, I've said for a long time, in fact, I said Windows 7 is the last version of the desktop operating system we really need, because we've moved into a mobile-centric, cloud-centric world. And what is the role of an operating system in that kind of environment? I think Microsoft has responded very appropriately to some of the new modern requirements. So number one, no OS upgrade cost. So that if you want the new version of the operating system, just like on your phone, you get the new version of the operating system. Number two, it's been reported that it is going to be a much more modular operating system, so that rather than getting massive upgrades every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years,
Right.
we'll get incremental upgrades with some degree of regularity. I couldn't tell you what version of Android I'm operating on specifically, and I don't really care. I just know that periodically my phone says, hey, there's an upgrade available, install it, and I get some new capabilities. And that's what we want out of a modern, always connected, online, cloud-based infrastructure supporting operating system. So I think Microsoft is making some appropriate, and I would argue long overdue changes. That's the argument I was making with Windows 7 being the last, that we don't really need much in the way of operating system advancements. What we want is to put a stable platform in place that enables cloud and mobile and stuff like that. And Windows 10 promises to be that platform for Microsoft. So
you
bravo, but belated.
So you mentioned the demise of the desktop operating system, and you always say people overestimate short-term impact and underestimate long-term impact. Where I'll put on your prognosticator hat. When do we not have a desktop operating system?
Well, the prognosticator hat says several years after we don't have COBOL programmers anymore. You know, I mean, there are a whole bunch of things, you know, that for better or for worse, there's a long tail of, you know, system installs. Things don't go away. Didn't Western Union just shut down telex in the last?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was probably some telex operator in a back room somewhere going, there's nobody I can communicate with anymore.
And there are still people using rotary phones on a daily basis.
Right. You know, and so, you know, when do desktop operating systems go away? It's a long time, but one of the, you know, interesting things, you know, out of this mobile cloud pervasively connected world is the ability to maintain currency is much easier. And this is a security problem we've had with all of these legacy platforms, that the percentage of people running on old unpatched versions of things is large, so that even when patches get released, you know, they don't make it onto the platform in any efficient time frame. So there are massive vulnerabilities out there. We now have an environment where things will be much more current, and that's great for application developers. That's great for support people. That's great for users. So we'll have those things around in legacy fashion for a long period of time, but I think the combination of compelling advantages, zero upgrade cost, you know, modern platform and so on, that the adoption rate of the new OS, you know, should be greater than the typical adoption rate of an operating system platform, which has traditionally been very slow, and we still have large pockets of Windows 95 and people who think XP is good enough because it wasn't worth going through the hassle of upgrading. I think this will be a quicker and more broad adoption.
So from a company that has, for decades, lived on desktop and shrink-wrap software,
yeah,
you're sitting in Nadella's conference room and you're having a strategy session. What are you thinking? I mean, they've done some cloud. They've Office 365, and you know,
yeah, they've done a lot of cloud, you know, and
that's on the application side. But they make so much money selling OS, service software.
But you know, that's the opportunity Satya Nadella has, you know, kind of during his honeymoon period. We've had this conversation many times. I've long made the argument that it's easy to fault Steve Ballmer for having missed things, but if he had stood up at any point during his tenure and said, you know, this cloud thing's going to be important, and we're just going to trash our existing business. I'm going to kill Office and kill Windows because we've got to position ourselves strategically for the long term, even while I have no idea how we're going to make money at this thing. But we've got to be leaders at it. You know, the board would have fired him before he finished his speech. His shareholder lawsuits would have been waiting for him in the door as he walked out of the conference room. Right. It was, you know, impossible for him to be able to do that. Nadella has several things working in his favor. Number one, you know, he's the new guy and was brought in precisely to be the anti-Steve, so that there's an expectation that he would do these things. Number two, the announcement in the last couple of weeks, Amazon just broke out its AWS, you know, its cloud business numbers, and lo and behold, they're doing $6 billion, which is non-trivial. You know,
right, for a business that was a side business.
Zero. Yeah,
no, but it was a side. It was just an effect of they want to be able to have to scale on their own, and they said, wait a second, other people can use this.
Right.
Let's sell it.
Yeah. They went from $0 to $6 billion, you know, annual run rate, you know, at a rapid growth rate, you know, something in the range of 50%, and they claim their profitability on that $6 billion is around $1 billion. You know, so they've not bad. You know, they've demonstrated that there's a real business out there and that they are making inroads. So offensively, Nadella can say, I was brought in to do this. Defensively, he can say, you know, look at what Amazon's doing. Look at what others are going to do. We need to do that, and there is a real market now. So I think all the forces are aligned that enable Microsoft, you know, to do things that would not have been possible, you know, a year or two ago, no matter who was running the company.
So, changing topics, with anytime you have Geddon in a name, it makes news.
Mobile Geddon.
Mobile Geddon. being found on the internet has been a critical component for marketing for many years, and Google, it's a arms race. You have people who are trying to game the system, and then you have Google trying to change the rules to make it harder to game the system.
Yeah, those of you who are unfamiliar, there's a term known as SEO, search engine optimization. Basically, you want to be on the first page of Google results, and Google doesn't tell you here's how we calculate the rankings. The EU is basically saying here's how they calculate the rankings. If Google, then first page. If everyone else, then penalty. It's not quite that pernicious. But the bottom line, appearing on the first page of Google search results is hugely important to any business that relies on Google for driving traffic. And if you look at their $50+ billion business, it's fundamentally built on the fact that people will pay money to appear on the homepage of the first page of the results or in some prominent place. Placement matters. So when Google changes its algorithm, there's all sorts of, oh my God, what's different? What do I have to do now?
So 2 years they changed the algorithm to get away from keyword stuffing.
Yes.
And more towards natural language and questions, and so people had to think about that it's no longer just about stuffing keywords. But now they're saying it's mobile.
Yeah, they're basically saying so many people are searching on, well, there's what they're saying, let's play Mad Magazine, what they said, what they really meant. What they said is, because more and more people are accessing things on mobile, we will ascribe higher ratings to those websites that are mobile optimized to give the users a better experience.
Right.
What they really meant was Facebook is getting 3/4 of its revenue from mobile. We're not nearly getting enough money from mobile. Our cost per click is going down because the returns we get on mobile aren't really good enough, and what we need to do is drive up our mobile revenue opportunity. And the way we're going to do that is by being more mobile friendly and basically saying to people that you've got a mobile friendly platform, we'll drive more traffic your way, and oh, by the way, as a result, you should pay us more.
Right. But it's not just that Facebook is on mobile. Facebook being effective on mobile is an effect, not a reason. Meaning, mobile first is where the users are.
Yes, or whether it's mobile first, it's just the volume of mobile consumption in a lot of environments is much higher. We're doing more on our phones, every day as they get more powerful, more capable, bigger screens. We were talking beforehand about how, with the advent of Note 4, which I carry, or the Apple iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, the tablet business is really, taken a severe hit because we can do, more and more stuff on this form factor that doesn't require a 7-inch tablet. And in fact, certain of the tablet manufacturers are abandoning the 7-inch form factor and going to the 8 or 9-inch form factor because there's not enough differentiation at 7 from these 5.7, 6.3 inch form factors. So, but the bottom line is there's more going on with mobile, but the challenge for everybody save Facebook has been mobile monetization is much more difficult than desktop monetization.
You want to explain that?
The advertising dollars, fundamentally the advertising dollars, there are a lot of people pumping money into banner ads and Google search result placements and so on. So a lot of money going into desktop advertising. Mobile doesn't have as much screen real estate. We haven't identified the best kind of mobile ad form factors. Right. So even while the traffic on mobile is greater than that on desktop, the money available to support advertising in mobile form factors is a fraction of that in the desktop. Facebook seems to have cracked the code a little bit, but no one else has. And so this change in rankings to some extent is Google's attempt, yes, to give users a better experience, but equally importantly, to help them drive greater monetization opportunities
Right.
on the mobile platform, because they've got the traffic, they don't have the money.
No, there's no question that translated ads from desktop to mobile it doesn't translate.
No.
And so they need to figure out a different way to get your attention on a mobile device.
And you know, this is something I'm surprised you didn't hit me with, you know, Jonathan, you always talk about this, is the contextual awareness, you know, on this platform. The opportunities to add, you know, I mean, we think of advertising as a dirty word, you know, and I actually believe there's the opportunity that advertising, in fact, can be a real value add. That when somebody's got contextual awareness about me, and there's nothing more contextual than this thing. It knows where I am, it knows what I'm doing, it knows my likes and interests, that there's a real opportunity for it to deliver value add capabilities that are better than my desktop platform that is frequently, you know, very constrained in its ability to present value to me because I'm not near any of the things that I actually want.
Also, this is much closer. Traditionally, you have a desktop at home and you'll have a desktop in the office. And the advertiser doesn't know necessarily, I mean, it knows through, you know, Chrome.
IP address.
Or IP address, but there's nothing, you're right, there's nothing more personal. That's your device.
Right.
No one else uses it.
Right.
And so everything on it relates to you and can deliver context clues.
Yeah. And the information it's
Right.
yeah, and the information it's got, it knows where I am, it knows what I'm doing. There are all sorts of contextual clues. So, you know, hopefully somewhere along the way, the opportunity to drive value and therefore attract revenue and advertisers on the mobile platform will be greater than that of the desktop by far. But right now, users are ahead of advertisers, and the net result being, you know, that the advertising, you know, the money to support mobile just isn't there yet. And of course, advertisers always lag, but I think this Mobilegeddon is Google's stake in the ground that says, okay, advertisers, you know, you need to be more aware of Google, that Google's monetization opportunities, but you advertisers' value opportunities are greater on mobile, so get with the program.
So they're actually going to force innovation. They're going to force the advertisers to figure out a way to do it. They have the advertisers do their work for them.
Yeah, you know, that's a, you know,
I mean,
you know, you're ascribing some, you know, I think altruistic.
No, meaning that we want to make more money on mobile advertising. So I'm going to make it so that mobile advertising has a higher prevalence and is higher importance on the platform. So it's going to force the advertisers to be more relevant on mobile.
And, you know, there's a history of Google doing things where it believes the rest of the world isn't doing enough to meet Google's objectives. And so, you know, Google comes out with Nexus phones, you know, where it's like, okay, phone guys, you're doing really boring things. We're going to put a reference platform. We don't really want to be a phone manufacturer, but if you're not going to do neat stuff in hardware, we're going to do neat stuff in hardware.
Raise the bar.
Cable companies, you know, you're not doing enough to deliver high-speed bandwidth at an affordable price. We're going to do Google Fiber. You know, their newest one is phone programs. You know, the cellular carriers, that they're going to introduce a, you know, cellular service that basically has cheap, affordable data, and you only pay for what you use. And it's because the cellular companies aren't enabling, you know, cellular data at a cheap enough rate to support Google's ambition. So Google has always been willing to invest, to prod people to do things that are ultimately in Google's best interest. You know, the fact that they're in everybody else's interest may or may not be an ancillary benefit, you know, but the net result being Google will invest in very self-serving activities, and Mobilegeddon is one of those. They need more money on their advertising platforms, and if they need to provide powerful incentive to the marketers to do the things Google wants them to do, that's exactly what they've done here. So yeah, it's great for the marketers. They should have been doing this all along. They ought to be more responsive to where users are. They ought to be, all sorts of things ought to be they haven't been, so Google's going to force their hand.
So speaking of finding other ways to monetize, and so Microsoft, it was going the rounds on Facebook. Microsoft said, put your picture in and we'll tell you how old you are.
Yeah.
And we always have, we've talked about it here before, that if you don't know what the product is, if you can't figure out what the product is, it's you.
No, I'll tell you, I love that service. You know, that you know, because it said I was 40. Yeah. Well, let's just say I'm old enough to make penalty-free withdrawals from my IRA. You know,
Right.
So the fact that it gets 40 is great, but you know, but always read the fine print. The fine print, among other things, is you've now given Microsoft the right to use your picture. You've given them all sorts of metadata. You know, and this is one of those things. It was a Microsoft researcher initiative that I think expanded way beyond what she thought was going to, you know, happen.
Right.
And you know, the fact, you know, so many people are calculating, oh, the algorithm was really bad. It guessed either really high or really low or wildly inaccurate. This wasn't about the aging algorithm. It was about collecting data so that they can build intelligent systems that maybe do better facial recognition, that give them more information. You know, there are so many things out there now that are data grabs. And you know, will you willingly give up your data in return for something? And boy, did they set a low threshold. In return for guessing your age, you're going to give them rights to your pictures and all sorts of data about them. You know, that was a really low threshold, but I fell for it.
And they found something.
Did you fall for it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to try it. Guess my age. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, that's one where I'd include it in a shame on you segment, except I fell for it. Damn it. You know.
Well, you know, there's something that we've talked about, and I'm going to be talking at a TED event about, which is the whole the change in the expanded need for the research process and understanding how to get information and how to, you know, I joke about the fact that, you know, when I'm with family or friends, if somebody asks me a question and I don't know the answer, but I kind of think I know, I'll make it up. I'll say it with a straight face and people believe me. Well, we have a whole internet of people who do that. And, you know, and we have people who fall for it. You know, Bill Gates is not going to give you $5,000 if you click like on that Facebook page. But yet it keeps popping up, and it could be 3 years ago, and it pops up. It runs in cycles.
But there are a couple of things there. One, you know, the whole Nigerian scam thing. You know, we sit there.
Oh, this is good. This is good.
Yeah. You know, we sit there and go, how could anybody fall for this? But the answer is, when the cost is zero, you know, if only one person falls for it, you know, you've got an incredible payback.
No,
you know,
you know that they.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So well, they intentionally. So you think, how could anybody fall for that? The grammar is bad. It just looks totally ridiculous. They actually make it so that smart people will laugh at it and not do it because they don't want to spend the time responding to people who are not going to
fall for it. Yeah.
So they intentionally write it that way. So where we think they're being stupid, they're actually being remarkably clever.
I know our audience doesn't have that problem, but if you responded to one of those ads saying, wow, maybe it's me, you are an idiot.
No. If you responded to one of those, I actually have a cousin who's also a prince.
Yeah, but yes, you know, they are self-selecting. There are a whole bunch of things like that. You know, maybe for another day we'll talk about it, but the whole big data issue, you know, is such a fascinating one, you know, that I hate big data, and I've been on this rant
but
before.
Even before you get that, I just want to say that they're doing a TEDx event here in Westchester, in Tarrytown, on May 28th. I will be speaking. It's called TEDx Tarrytown Women. I'm not a woman.
Is that an announcement? Yeah.
I'm not
You're
a woman.
going to Sweden next week?
But they wanted to have some variety on the panel.
Yeah.
And so if you've never been to a TEDx event, it's really, really remarkable experience. It's on Thursday, May 28th. I will be speaking actually about those topics, about the skills essential skills for the 21st century in terms of being able to just process this volume of information.
Yeah, but to the discussion we're having, one of the challenges big data has is we generate so many more false positives. Before we had all sorts of data, there were a couple of things that stood out as anomalies, and we were able to track down those anomalies. Now we have such an incredible stream of data that it is easy to get overwhelmed by the false positives and actually not see, the underlying issues and truths out of the data until it's too late. The most recent example being this, Aerowings flight, where all the information on the flight data recorder, on the outbound flight, the pilot tested the ability to set the GPS, to set the autopilot to 100 feet, because he didn't know what would happen. Would he be able to use the autopilot to crash the plane?
Right.
We discovered 3 weeks later what he had done.
Right.
The data was there, and we weren't, that's just a recurring theme with data. And I think that there are a whole bunch of things, to get it back to our issue, and you made an interesting point, about making up the data. I remember this. When I joined Gartner in 1987, shortly after that, we had a research offsite. And Gideon Gartner, the founder and at the time CEO of the company, and a man to whom I owe a lot in my professional career, stood up before the assembled group of analysts that at the time was in the 20s, not quite age, but in number, and said,
well, and Microsoft has said back then. I looked older then.
Right. My hair was falling out,
Right.
But anyhow, he said, if you don't know the answer to something, make it up. And I'm sitting there going, whoa, this is the research methodology of this company, and this is what I've bet my career on. And he then explained why you do that. And the reason why you do that is if you go something, so what's it going to be? And you go big, and I go, no, it's really going to be big. And you go, no, it's going to be big. That's not a particularly useful discussion. Whereas if I say it's going to be 7 million, and you go, well, the world's population is this, and we start to triangulate around the data, and the mere fact of putting a number out there leads to a discussion which inevitably improves the number. And so, I'm a believer in that approach, and more broadly, this is one of the things I've lived my personal and professional life. Personally, it irritates my friends on occasion, but I relentlessly focus on balancing input, process, and output. Input.
Right.
Let's make sure, one of the big challenges the internet has, it's really easy to live in a bubble where the only information you get
Right.
is that which reinforces your preconceived positions. And that is extremely problematic. So input, I think it's important that you look for inputs that actually challenge your beliefs and not just affirm them. But you could then be nothing more. Yeah, an open mind, yes. And you could do nothing but be an information junkie and take that in all day. And that's not terribly interesting. You've got to turn it into some kind of output.
Right, but you see, it's kind of a DevOps model for an analyst.
Okay, yeah.
Meaning we have to start somewhere.
Right.
And then we're going to iterate.
Yes.
From there, as opposed to we're going to sit in a room and we're going to, however long it takes until we have the right number.
Yeah, but balancing that input, process, and output, I think, is critical, because it's easy, especially with the internet. You can be an information junkie. You can do nothing but read web pages all day and gather all sorts of information and have done absolutely nothing valuable with it. You haven't turned it into output. Yeah, so how do you create, what's the output you're going to create? And then one of the things I hate about Twitter is, the output most people create is the retweet. And because the person put 137 characters in their original tweet, when you retweeted it, you could only go +1.
Or you have to figure out what grammar things and how are you going to make it look that they
or empty,
modified tweet, right?
Yeah, and even if you had all 140 characters, it's really hard to add value. But I think the most important thing is, not just taking input and flipping around output, but I think the core of an analyst, it's real easy to take a line like this and project that it's going to go like that. The real art comes from, where are the deltas? What causes, every chart we draw has a hockey stick at some point. So what are the conditions under which that hockey stick is going to occur?
Right.
So many times there's a rush to judgment. And one of the reasons why I'm spending much more time these days on Facebook than on Twitter, on Facebook, especially now where you can reply to the individual comments, you can actually have a rich and nuanced conversation that challenges assertions and, threads its way down and gets back up, where Twitter conversations tend to be, I agree, I disagree, and that's the end of the value.
Right. No, I definitely find much deeper engagement and much deeper context in Facebook conversations. I've actually found myself doing that.
Yeah, which strikes to some of the challenges Twitter's having. I don't know if you want to go there now, but because for those of you old enough to remember what a record is, we sound like a broken record when it comes to.
Well, let's see. I did want to talk about talking about big data. We're both fans of Waze.
Yes.
And I think that this
WAZE.
WAZE. So, for those not familiar, it's a traffic navigation app, I guess is the way to describe it, right?
That's one way to describe it.
All right, how would you describe it?
It's also a real-time traffic information platform.
Right.
That
crowdsourced.
Yeah. Navigation is the way we use it. But the platform itself is an incredible information gathering thing. Because what did we do before Waze? Those of you old enough and who live in the New York metro area probably remember Flying Fred Feldman, WOR's traffic reporter. And the way we gathered traffic was a guy flew around in a helicopter, and reported on traffic.
Right.
And that's the way we did traffic when I was growing up.
Right, but related to that is also if somebody flashed their headlights coming at you on the highway and the other way, you knew it was a cop.
Yes.
Somewhere down there. That was another signal. So we had these ways of we had external sources of getting information about traffic, but we also had sort of idiosyncratic communication means to get
M to M, if you will. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But Waze is actually it's just blown up that in terms of the interactions.
Well, because it knows where I am, knows how fast I'm going. It has all sorts of information, and it communicates back to the servers, in a crowdsourced fashion that they know immediately when there's a traffic problem, because everybody using Waze, all of a sudden their speed goes from 55, to 10.
They know the speed limit in that is 55, and everybody's going 10 miles an hour.
Right. There are times with the imprecision of Waze where, maybe I pulled into a rest area and I stopped, and Waze will pop up an alert going, "Are you in traffic?" Because it didn't think there was traffic, but all of a sudden I'm going 0. Right. So it knows there's something anomalous.
Right.
And because I'm a single car, they're thinking, is that a problem we're just learning about, or is it just him?
But it's everything. There's a pothole. There's a car on the side of the road. There's a police car. There's all sorts of information that you could pass on to the driver behind you.
Right. And it's one of those things. The value of the network. The more people that use the platform, the better the real-time information is. And there's so many. I mean, you love this as much as I do. What does real-time information mean for certain things? So, back in the Flying Fred Feldman days, I knew that, if I had a choice of going to JFK via the Whitestone or Throgsneck Bridge, the first time he said the Throgsneck's backed up, go to the Whitestone, I'd go to the Whitestone.
Right.
The second time he said it, 10 minutes later, I'd probably go to the Whitestone.
Right.
If he said it the third time, by now so many people had diverted to the Whitestone that I, in fact, was better off ignoring that report and going to the Frog's Neck.
Traffic is such a complex system.
Yes.
One person slows down
For
for half a
no
mile,
apparent reason.
and then suddenly
Not for half a mile. They tap their
they tap
brakes.
their brakes,
Yeah.
and suddenly you have a traffic jam, and you have that phantom. Why was there traffic there? You get to the end of it, and there's nothing there.
One of the very first computer programs I wrote in APL was a traffic simulator. Because what is traffic other than APL was great for manipulating arrays.
Right.
And traffic in many ways is just one great big array, that there are so many lanes, there are so many vertical spots available. I wrote a traffic simulator that attempted to, look at the impact of somebody lifting their brakes or somebody changing lanes. It's one of the reasons why self-driving cars hold such promise is right now, the cost of traffic in terms of tapping brakes, changing lanes is incredible, such that the ripple effect is large and lasts a long period of time. If we take that out of the driver's hands and put it into an intelligent system, we can be so much
so you
more.
take emotion and human behavior out of the decision.
Yes, and put logic and efficiency.
Right.
And as somebody who loves cars, I hate the notion of self-driving cars. I also think, that there are those who say they're going to be prevalent by 2020. I don't believe it. I think the software issues for this are going to be huge. I think especially here in the States,
Software,
the legal issues.
I would say the regulatory issues are going to be.
The legal issues are going to be, not that we need any more full employment acts for lawyers, but that's going to be.
Right now I get into a car accident, it's my insurance and your insurance. But let's say that two self-driving cars get into a car accident.
Right.
Do we sue the software company? Do we sue the car company? Do we sue the other?
Yeah, and by the way, they're fascinating. We don't have time to get into it much today, but a couple of the car manufacturers, John Deere now, you don't buy a John Deere tractor. Someday, read, those of you who are in the market for a tractor, read the contract you sign. You do not own the vehicle. John Deere grants you a in perpetuity license to utilize the vehicle, but they own the vehicle, including the software.
Does Tesla have something like that? I wonder.
Quite possibly, because there are all sorts of issues. As a kid growing up, I don't know if you were at all a gearhead. I remember poking my head under the hood of the car. Mom, I did this when nobody was looking, but there are these timing lights. You could adjust the timing belts of the car, and there are all sorts of things. Today, if you want to modify your car, you can buy modded chips. As we go into this Internet of Things connected vehicle world, the ability for you to interact with the software in your car actually poses a system risk. And the auto manufacturers are basically saying we need to put in place licensing structures that prohibit people from introducing safety concerns. And oh, by the way, it just so happens to represent a great revenue opportunity for them.
They're going to put one of those labels on the hood where if you break the seal,
Yeah.
it points the warranty.
Yes, but yes, that
Right.
if you've messed with the software and there's a there's an accident or a mechanical problem, you voided the warranty. We're interested, the full employment for IT lawyers, but look at John Deere. You don't own the tractor. They just grant you a permanent irrevocable license, but it comes with some restrictions about your ability to actually go mess with the system that's theirs, not yours.
Right. So tool time, if you want to pump up the power on your mower,
Yeah.
we get in trouble. All right, so let's get to some kudos and factoids. And I think we have a quote of the month as well. So it's not often that we have a kudo.
Yeah.
But you have a kudo.
Yeah, I came back, spent 2 wonderful
You just
weeks.
flew in from Italy
and
and
boy,
boy,
are
my
my
arms tired. Okay.
Yeah, but 2 fabulous weeks in Italy. I don't want to sound like the tourist board, but boy, Italy is a wonderful country, and it's a great time of year, and the people are great, and the sights are amazing, and the food is spectacular. I had a great time. I also, one of the interesting effects of open skies kinds of, agreements. I flew from JFK to Milan, Italy on Emirates airline. Go Google Emirates flying to Milan and you'll discover there's this whole brouhaha about the ability of the Gulf carriers to fly other than from Dubai to New York or wherever they have.
Not having Dubai as the hub.
Right.
Direct flights.
Yeah, but anyhow, I flew Emirates, and I'm used to, okay, transatlantic flights, you bring your music, you live with the crappy little in-flight entertainment system. Emirates, number one, has a great big, I think it's a 10-inch screen, which when you're sitting that close to it is really nice size, plug, USB power.
USB.
And most fascinating to me, Wi-Fi, transatlantic, reasonably good, I mean, north of 1 megabit speed, and the price point. None of this go-go $20 for a transcon flight. 500 meg of data was a buck. A buck, I mean, it was a no-brainer to, take shots out the plane. Oh, here's landfall. Oh, look at this beautiful cloud formation.
It was no brainer to do 2 different devices, or was it per device, or was it per? We only did it on one device.
I only did it on one device.
But still, if you had 3 devices, it's still $3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The economics.
What was the 501st gig? What was the cost for that?
You had to do another buck. Yeah. Yeah. A buck for 500 meg. Yeah. Bravo, Emirates. Don't get me into talking. Let me pet peeve. Okay, Emirates. The carry-on baggage situation where you tried to charge me, for an overweight carry-on piece instead of, everybody else in the cabin. You didn't weigh those, and then they wanted to charge me $175 to check an additional bag. Oh, by the way, I'm challenging that. So there were some issues on the ground in Milan. The people in JFK were as good as can be. The return flight.
They lure you in with the cheap bandwidth.
Yeah, they must have hired someone from Spirit Airlines to start pricing things. But but the 500 meg for a buck. Wow.
All right, we've got some interesting factoids.
Okay, 42%. Do you use Tinder?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm not one of those 42%.
You're not one of the 42%, but
no.
Tinder, one of the dating apps where you can, see people and swipe whether you like them or don't like them. 42% of the Tinder users are not single. Yeah, 42%. So when you see somebody on there, there's an almost 50-50 chance that person married or in a relationship.
Right. All right, what's next?
I found a couple of data points that I love. Intel. Well, you've seen the answer, so I can't very well ask it. Yeah, but I'll ask the audience. How many transistors do you think Intel makes a second? A second, every second.
Transistors?
Yes, transistors in microprocessors. Yeah.
The chips.
1,000, 100,000.
You need to put your finger by your mouth when you say it.
No, in 1 second.
1 second.
Yeah.
Every second of the year.
Every second of the year. And the answer is 10 billion. 10 billion transistors a second. Yeah. I got that from Intel's CFO on Bloomberg TV when talking about quarterly results or something. That number is just staggering when you think about it.
And close to that staggering number is your Apple number.
Yeah. The amount of cash Apple has, and this number is, outdated by a couple of days, so it's probably now north of $200 billion.
Cash.
Yeah.
That's not revenue. That's not.
Yeah.
That's just cash on hand.
and the interesting challenge they've got. What do you do with that? I mean, when you start thinking about what they could buy with $200 billion, I don't want to, we could Google it, and it's probably interesting, but I saw something along the lines of that's slightly more than the amount of money the U.S. Treasury has on hand. I mean, there are reasons why the Treasury puts its money to work and Apple hasn't figured out, but Apple has more money than the government. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And more interesting returns. Yeah. And puts it to better use. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's $200 billion in cash.
So as internet old timers, or as technology old timers, I like this one about the internet capacity.
Yeah. We added to the internet backbone last year, and we've had this discussion before. Whether there's monetization in internet capacity.
Right.
We added more capacity to the internet last year. 65 terabytes per second. Capacity was added.
Terabits.
Terabits. Yes, I'm sorry.
There's a difference between terabits and terabytes.
Yes, by about a factor of 8. Yeah. But anyhow, 65 terabits came online. That represents more than the entire internet bandwidth in 2011. So in a period of 3 years, we grew more than the entire internet had in 2011. So we have a massive expansion of capacity, but interestingly enough, a voracious appetite for said capacity. So it's not like a.
And speaking of which, that's your next factoid. Comcast.
Oh, yeah. Well, Comcast, think of them as a cable TV provider. They now have more internet subscribers than TV subscribers. I think some of it represents the fact that at home you don't have a lot of choices. So you are going to get internet service. You may or may not get TV service. So Comcast is really now an internet provider that happens to offer some television rather than a television provider that also provides you internet.
That's right.
Yeah, they're an internet service provider that happens to offer television programming as well.
And now related to Mobilegeddon, we have
Yeah, Google's got more search queries coming from mobile than they do from desktop. Hence why Mobilegeddon was necessary, because while they've got more searches coming from mobile than desktop, and unlike Facebook that generates 3/4 of its revenue from mobile, I believe the mobile number for Google is in the ballpark of around 15% of their revenue. So over half of their searches are coming from mobile, but over 80% of their revenue is coming from desktop. Hence their business challenge.
That's why they want to change the rules. That's
Yes.
why they want to push advertisers.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes, they want to make more money on mobile, and by giving a better mobile result, to people, they can charge premium prices, get more people advertising on mobile. It's good, it's necessary, it's the right thing, and it's also very self-serving.
And because on this show how much we love privacy and security, our quote of the month is apropos.
Yes, and comes from our new U.S. Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter. He goes, I think that people and companies need to be convinced that everything we do in the cyber domain is lawful and appropriate and necessary. And were more disingenuous words ever spoken. If he had used "or" as a connector, I might have actually believed him.
Lawful or appropriate or necessary.
Yes,
that would work.
Then I would have believed him. When he goes lawful and appropriate and necessary, his ability to convince me that that's the standard to which this, Department of Defense is going to hold things, or the NSA or whatever, is, yeah, right. yeah. I spent some time in the PR field. If they gave me a task to come up with a PR campaign to make that one believable.
That's not a good way to get started.
No, no.
That's sort of like giving everybody the finger, saying, "I don't care what you think.
You know,
We're going to
but
do what we want."
I'll have to count the characters. Maybe he was very smart, and that's actually 137 characters. So he knows that the most people are going to do with it is retweet it, you know. And if they do a -1, he can live with
Did he
that.
tweet that? Does he have a Twitter account?
I don't know. I
I'll have
hope
to
so.
check into that.
He should.
All right, well, that's our show for today. I'm Alan Berkson, and this has been Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmus. We're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be a special show at the Westchester Digital Summit on May 14th, and our next regularly scheduled show will be on Friday, June 12th. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.